great that you've all had a good chat, and that's what today is about, and that's what a lot of CaSTCo has been about bringing lots of different sectors together, lots of different people together in order to move things on. I'm really quite taken with the fact that this whole journey began with Michelle being quite concerned about lions escaping from Bristol Zoo. And actually now we're talking about how can we let the CaSTCo ethos escape into lots of other areas and across all we do, about data collection, absolutely, but about broader ways of collaborating. So I'm really pleased to introduce this session, which is around trusting that data so we can escape safely and with trust, which I think is really important. As I say, this session now is to explore building trust in data towards better informing communities and decision makers about the best actions that might make our rivers healthier. I'd like to start by inviting a couple of lightning talks. So first from Alfie Kelly, Senior Technical Analyst from the Rivers Trust, and then followed directly by Josh from Open Data Institute, and then we'll move that into a panel discussion. So Alfie, come on up.
Sure, thanks everyone. So I've got 5 minutes, which isn't very long, to discuss some of the kind of key challenges we encounter when trying to build trust in citizen science data. So I want to take a look at a few of the successes as well, and also have a look to the future, so think about that roadmap. So just starting with some of the challenges, and this isn't unique to citizen science, so it's really common across almost all catchment data and data environments. But think of kind of a hose pipe of trusted data. So at the source is all the great work that we do with the methods. So we have a really solid foundation, and we have accurate data that's tied to recognised methods, and that flows in to this hose pipe. But then things can start to get a little bit messy. So we can have missing data, we can have duplicated sites, sometimes those sort of collection forms, they might be sort of poorly designed and lead to some errors, and sometimes we don't have much quality control going on. And just like that, the trust that we've built with those rigorous methods, that starts to erode, and trust can sort of erode very fast, much faster than you build it. So nobody's at fault for this. The reality of citizen science is that most people in charge of the data are not in fact data specialists. So what we also see is a fragmented data environment. So we have lots of formats and lots of systems and little standardization. So that makes analysis and comparison very difficult. And it's actually very difficult to build a clear picture of the catchment health. So on top of that, I'm sure we all know this, data is often siloed, so it's not open and it's difficult to access. And that really discourages collaboration and it limits impact. So the outcome of all this is that we may have very little trusted data flowing out of that hose pipe. And that's something we need to tackle. And indeed, we have been tackling on CaSTCo. So on screen now, these are some sort of common concerns that many of the stakeholders within CaSTCo might have. And many of those concerns can be addressed at a data or a method level. However, trust also hinges on personal relationships. So the example on the screen now, a landowner worrying about volunteers exaggerating data, a very valid concern. Even with the most robust open data system, backed by the best methods, if trust is not built at that personal level between volunteers, coordinators, and landowners, those trust issues are going to persist. So it's worth highlighting that building trust in data is not just a technical challenge, it's a human one too, and that makes it incredibly complicated. So all that goes back to that brilliant equation that Michelle showed earlier. So just a really quick snapshot of some of the great work from CaSTCo, and there's loads more, but I don't have much time. So the brilliant method work, so that really sort of is a step. And the next step for that is embedding it into like a metadata model. And then John Finley and the team at the EA, a brilliant, fantastic guide to citizen science, and that covers QC and survey design and data best practice, so it's really worth checking that out. We've also worked with some of the major data platforms out there, so Cartographer and Water Rangers and Esri, and this has helped groups to get set up quickly, and it's also ensured that data is open via APIs. Alongside partners like CEH, we developed the data governance principles, so they're to guide people in how They should govern their data to ensure the greatest benefit to all. And finally, the Data Hub, that's now in place. So that's supporting open access to both authoritative and citizen science data. So that's really started to enable that weight of evidence approach. And if we think about the future, so all of that, we've built this incredible trust foundation. But now it's time to build on that. So we need to agree data schemas across common methods and parameters, for example, water quality. We also need a simple and agreed metadata model. And we should explore like a broader citizen science trust framework, and this is something that Josh is going to speak more on next. And we need to continue to work with and invest in data platforms like Cartographer and Water Rangers and more. So we need templates and tools so that groups can get started quicker and can conform to any agreed data standards. And we need to keep pushing to integrate that data into authoritative systems and decision making. And finally, we need a central ingestion platform or platforms, and they'll pull data from all those brilliant platforms out there and all those groups collecting the data and serve that data out in some agreed formats and standards. So really to build on all that great work that's been done with the Data Hub and other things. So that's really, really quick lightning talk. And I'm going to hand over to Josh. Was I on time? Just about. Yeah. Nice one.
Well done. Well, you really set the tone for the lightning talk there, so I'll try to keep up. So I'm going to start a little bit more conceptually than Alfie, but first I'd like to introduce the Open Data Institute. For those that don't know us, we're a London-based nonprofit. Our work is towards a mission of creating an open and trustworthy data ecosystem, something we really believe that CaSTCo is trying to do as well, and that is towards a vision of a world where data works for everyone. So sort of stepping back from the practical into the conceptual, with our theory of change, we really believe that trust alongside openness is really necessary to create a positive impact from data. So unless data is trusted, there won't be as much flowing, people won't be able to share it as much, collect it as much, and so we need to improve that trust, which requires a lot of things like ensuring ethics, equity, engagement. So we sort of label these processes as data assurance. So this is essentially a process or a set of processes where we're increasing confidence, or that will increase confidence that data will meet a specific need. It's very use case oriented, and that organizations collecting, accessing, using, and sharing data are doing so in trustworthy ways. So when we're looking to answer that question of whose data do we trust, data that is assured, can be assured, helps us answer that question. At the ODI, we've created a framework for data assurance practices that can help improve trust, help build trustworthiness in data and data ecosystems. And that ranges from accountability to privacy, security, standardization, resourcing, capability, ethics, engagement, and permissions. So I'm just going to give some quick examples of a few of those and how they kind of relate to the work that we're doing here today. So to start off with, I'll talk a little bit about engagement. Citizen science is, as you all know, a very participatory activity. So for trust to be built among communities and individuals that are operating within that citizen science space, a participatory approach is really critical to building that trust. And that's because participation with data can empower individuals and communities. It can improve data quality and decision making. And through that collaboration that you're right, we're going to hear a lot about today, we do sort of build that trust. And so how that can be achieved is at a number of levels, including at the data level, through people being involved in the creation, the maintenance, use, and sharing of data. At the organizational level, involved in sort of the governance of those organizations, performing those data activities. And at the policy level, people can be involved in determining the rules of the game and how that ecosystem will function. Going briefly to standardization. So if we say that whose data can be trusted, especially from a community side, is around participation and engagement, often standardization is a key way to get buy-in and trust from industry and from government. So there's lots of different things that we can standardize. And that ranges from technical elements to governance elements, but we can kind of combine these together in an idea of a trust framework or a data assurance framework. And so we're currently working on building that alongside Stream and CaSTCo. So if you're in the room here today, it's very likely that once we've kind of finished our first draft, you'll be able to input and feed into it, because we want your expertise and that kind of participatory approach to building that trust framework together and really meeting that standardization requirement. And finally, I'm going to talk very briefly about permissions or data access models as people might think of them. So whose data is trusted? Well, it's often organizations that have independent stewardship of that data, so they're more free from the biases around that. We think of these organizations as data institutions that play a variety of roles, from helping share sensitive data, to publishing open data, to generating insights and maintaining standards and other infrastructure. So we see that kind of CaSTCo and Stream are both playing a lot of these roles out there today in the citizen science world, from publishing data, from developing trust frameworks and setting those standards. So yeah, whose data do we trust? We trust data when it's assured, when it's independently governed and stewarded, when it's standardized. And because it's a participatory data ecosystem, we really need all of us kind of working here together to make that future happen. So thank you.
Brilliant. Thanks very much to Elfie and Josh, and that's been a really good introduction to this session around trust and data. And many of us spent a lot of time in July this year up at Newcastle really getting to grips with this concept. Somebody this morning said that data was their guilty pleasure. Not mine. Data, it's great, and I celebrate that, and we need to be able to do that. So now, if I may, I'll just invite the panel members up to the table with water there. So Ellie Brown from Ribble Rivers Trust, Becky Carter from Anglian Water, Kelly Haynes from Environment Agency, Melissa Tallock representing Stream, and Michelle Walker, who you've met earlier. So I think from any time now, you can obviously start to pose your own questions. But if I could just remind you, everybody at home and in the room, can we all please use the Slido system for questions? And that's where we'll be taking questions from later on. So it's great to feel that buzz of conversation and debate in the room, but just to be fair to everybody, so everybody can hear what's going on. Okay. So if I can just start then, and we'll go from the far end to here. If you'd just like to introduce yourselves, where you fit into CaSTCo, that would be a great starter.
So I'm Melissa Tallock, co-lead for the Stream Initiative, which is established data sharing infrastructure for the water sector. So by that we mean people, processes, data, value, governance, and a bit of technology for good measure.
So thank you. So hi, I'm Becky Carter from Anglian Water, and I oversee our ONEP Rural Regeneration Programme. This looks to improve water quality and water resources across 11 priority catchments via a grant scheme, targeted project development and catchment planning. And in terms of CaSTCo, I've been involved in the project management side from the Anglian Water perspective, and work really closely with Steve and John and Elle and the Anglian team to deliver our work, and also others like Rivers Ecology and the Freshwater Habitats Trust, so kind of across the whole side.
Hi, I'm Ellie Brown. I work for Ribble Rivers Trust. I'm our Head of Data, Evidence and GIS, and we are part of the Northwest demo for CaSTCo. In terms of my role, I've been in various data and evidence roles at the Trust for the past 10 years, and I lead in all our monitoring, citizen science and GIS work for the Trust. So that includes coordinating our catchment-wide monitoring to detect issues, whether that's by staff or by citizen scientists. And something that we do at the Trust is we pull together our data and data from other organisations to help us to figure out where we need to deliver our works across the catchment, where they're likely to have the greatest benefits. And in the past, that used to be our own data, open data or modelled data, but through CaSTCo, we've now been able to introduce citizen science data into that process as well.
Hello everyone, I'm Kelly Haynes. I'm the National Citizen Science Lead at the Environment Agency, and I sit nationally, but we have a team or a network of citizen science leads across the country, and as a network we've been supporting citizen science, supporting CaSTCo nationally, but also where we've got overlap in area where there's a demonstration catchment. Those area citizen science leads have been integral in supporting those demonstration catchments. So our role has really been looking internally at the Environment Agency, how we can better support citizen science going forward, so how we can standardise that approach nationally across all of those different operational areas, but also how we can work with others, so CaSTCo and NCEA and other programmes, to align that thinking and kind of have that shared direction towards a similar outcome.
Yeah, hi, you met me earlier, but technical director at the Rivers Trust and a professional data nerd, I think. I've been with the Rivers Trust for 15 years now, and together with Dave Johnson and other colleagues, we've built a technical team in the Rivers Trust that supports our network of Rivers Trusts and catchment partnerships to take an evidence-based approach. And my role in CaSTCo has been meddling in everything, I think, is a good summary. Just brilliant to kind of, really get involved in all of those elements that I spoke about earlier.
Brilliant, thank you. So a previous CaSTCo meeting, I heard that citizen science monitoring has to work twice as hard for half the recognition. So do we overestimate how reliable professional data is, and do we hold that in higher esteem over citizen science data? I wonder if I can come back to you, Kelly, first.
And I think firstly, we need to kind of move away from this theory or the notion that professional data sits over here and citizen science data sits over here and the two are in conflict, and really move towards that, that broader picture of diverse sets of data coming together to help us make more informed and more well-rounded decisions. And I think we recognise, and we have to recognise, that citizen science is very variable, so it goes across different scales, it's at different levels, it's for different purposes, and so it can be very difficult to kind of look at citizen science as one whole set of data. But actually what we found working with CaSTCo is the development of a tiered approach to how we look at citizen science data can help us to understand the kind of different methodologies, the different monitoring priorities, the different quality assurance or quality control if that's in place. But also to value that data no matter the level of that data. So it's not about one set of data being better than the other or holding it in higher esteem. I think it's about that the way that we've kind of depicted the puzzle, the tiers is as a puzzle, and I think it's really key to show that each bit of citizen science data, and any data actually, is really valuable in helping us to paint that broader picture and that richer understanding. And so it's different data for different purposes, but not one being better or worse than other.
And bringing it together, I think, absolutely. Yeah, Michelle, I'm sure.
Yeah, I mean, I touched on it in my talk that there was this kind of assumption, over the years that paid data must be better than voluntary data. And I think, firstly, we have challenged that really effectively on CaSTCo. I mean, we've seen some of our volunteers have professional level experience, skills, knowledge from their day jobs, or because they've put so many hours into, learning their science, they've become experts and easily matching or exceeding those that are paid. We've shown how we can benchmark our methods, how we can bring quality assurance, and how paid staff in the voluntary sector can also contribute those higher tiers of information. But like Kelly said, it's about what the purpose is that you're collecting that data for. And you can have really high precision points at the bottom of the catchment collecting brilliant data across the country that will just document the further decline in our rivers. Is it going to help us agree the causes, target the action, monitor the outcomes of what we're doing? No, it's not. You need greater spatial and temporal density of information to get that, and that's where not just citizen science, but the other tiers of information and all of us in the room can contribute that information, and it's not a binary choice. And, let's not forget all of the multiple other benefits, that social value that comes with engaging communities along the way and contributing the evidence.
I think that's right. Is there anything else anybody else would like to draw out from that, the concept of value in data?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's, I echo the points, like that it's complementary. It's not, it may be different, but it's complementary. It adds colour to the picture. And really what we're looking for is that joined up view, because the data should drive debate, not division. And by accepting that data is born different and understanding that and knowing what you can use what type of data for is critical. And that's probably the bit that's missing, as Alfie pointed out earlier.
Yeah, I think that's right. And I think trusting data and therefore having access to data to be able to think about it and trust it is really key, isn't it? And again, all the way through CaSTCo, we've talked about how the principles is that data is open. But I wonder, are there any risks in making data more accessible and more open? Or are there any risks in not doing that now? Wonder if I can direct that firstly to Ellie.
Yes, so if the purpose of making data open is that it can be used to drive positive change, which absolutely completely in favour for, we use so much open data at Ribble Trust and it really enhances the work that we do to improve our catchment. The thing that we've come up against recently is if we're wanting to drive positive change by making data open, in our particular circumstance, it was going to be counterproductive to that if we were to make all our citizen science data open. In the current circumstances, I would hope that in future it might be something that we'll be able to do. We've shared all our citizen science monitoring locations for the data hub, but not the actual raw data. And the reason for that is that we were very targeted with where we've directed our citizen scientists, either through where they adopt a site or through our monthly river blitzes. And so we get quite a spatially dense monitoring network, and it can highlight individual landowners or individual businesses that are causing some really significant pollution. But we've taken that data and we are working very productively with those businesses or with those landowners to remedy the issues. So we are using the data to create positive change, and to then publish that data in the public domain could break that trust that we've got with those businesses, with those landowners, and it could be very counterproductive to the really positive things that are coming out of us using this citizen science data. And we're also working really productively with the Environment Agency and United Utilities using this data as well. And at the moment, it wouldn't really work for us to publish all our raw data in the public domain, but the locations are out there and people can contact us if they want to use it, stating their reasons. So I'm completely in favour for it, but for us there is a risk at the moment.
And that has to be acknowledged, doesn't it? And I think that comes down to that equation again, and then the relationships that are built around trusting data. Becky, would you like to comment on that?
Yeah, I think it's perhaps on your point, Ellie, around the kind of bigger picture, like why are we collecting the data and then what are we going to do about it? Now it's almost the impact element. So if it's on a project-specific level, then maybe it makes sense to keep it for the time being closed, and based on the whole, we were working together towards a solution element. So I can see it from that perspective. I think CaSTCo for me personally has been a really great vehicle to work, with the EA and Rivers Trust and NGOs more collaboratively and build that trust and that sort of that open dialogue, so that we don't always agree on everything, but we all have that respect, and that trust, is really important. So. Yeah, I think ultimately being more open and transparent about our data is the direction of travel, and Anglian Water does share some data openly, like our EDM data. But there is that responsibility around how to explain the data that we've got clearly with context, so that it's not taken out of. Yeah, it's not sort of taken and then ran with, and actually really that sort of goes against what we're all trying to work towards, and that trust element. So it's kind of echoing Ellie's point, I think, that we're all really collectively after the same thing, which is, an improved environment. But it's about how we all get there together, not sort of running ahead and leaving others behind, I think.
Yeah, but I had a conversation over breakfast this morning just around what we hear in those sound bites and what you take from a number on a website, and it's sharing that and being upfront and transparent about that, but it's also taking a step back and then understanding what that means, and absolutely, as you say, it's the context and what the bigger picture that we're trying to solve is, I think, absolutely. If I can just move us on then, what do you think the key elements that we need to increase trust in catchment data and to create pathways to action? So we've got the roadmap, but that's for all of the CaSTCo family, And we need to branch that out, don't we? So, Melissa, if I come to you.
So a bit like beauty is in the eye of the beholder, trust is in the perception of the user. And so you have to get to know who are the users of that data and what is trust to them. So different users will have different trust thresholds, but having a clear understanding of what those are enables you to then prepare the data and capture the data maybe in a way that enables that trust to be achieved and that data to be used, because there's no good sort of like focusing on increasing quality of the data if you don't know who's going to be using it for what, because you could be preparing it in a way that is suboptimal or even too good a quality for the majority of the purposes. So it's about really understanding who your users of that data are. Who are the people who are going to take that data and convert it to impact and action, because that's really ultimately what the data is there for doing.
Michelle.
Yeah, and I think to add to that, some of the words I picked out of the roadmap that I really liked, it was formal accreditation. You know, we've tried some things on CaSTCo. We need to scale this up and get it recognised. And there was the word commitment in there. I really liked that. You know, it's commitment from government, it's commitment from the partners that we are backing this framework that we're building, and really everybody's recognising it, everybody understands, and we define the quality standards based on those pathways to impact and the end users. But it's also about co-design. We cannot lose sight of putting our volunteers and citizen scientists and communities front and centre. I mean, some of the work we did with ODI and Stream, building an idea of a water commons, having co-governance at that grassroots level, I think that's fantastic, and I'd love to see us build on that and make sure that we put the control with the data producers as well as the end users. I think that's essential.
Would anybody else like to just have their say in what we need to do next?
I think, coming back to the point I think Alfie made in the presentation around the context, so that kind of metadata and being transparent and clear about the purposes of that data. What was the objective for that monitoring? How was that data collected? What was the quality control, if there was any in place? Helps the end user to understand it's not just a number, they understand the context behind that, and that's where the trust comes from. And I think kind of building that transparency helps to build trust, and then that's where they kind of strengthen those relationships and strengthens the use in that information as that kind of weight of evidence approach, where we know then what we're dealing with and we know then what that can support in terms of decision making.
And there again, the weight of evidence is something that's come out a lot, hasn't it, through the CaSTCo process, and adding to that and contributing. So I'll leave it there with those questions, and I can see there's loads coming in on Slido, and there's key messages behind you. So just starting at the top there then, does the EA as a regulator recognise Kelly's view of the value of citizen science, and are your team still seen as pioneers? So would you like to answer that, Kelly, on behalf of the rest of the EA? I don't know quite where to land that.
Shall I do that?
Oh, yeah. I don't think we can't hear people in the audience, unfortunately.
You could come up and
so
speak in the mic, Owen. We all want to hear.
Break the rules. Go ahead.
I wasn't expecting this. So Owen Lewis, Deputy Director of Monitoring, Insights and Innovation in the Chief Scientist Group in the Environment Agency. So I'm Kelly's boss. So it's really unfair to let Kelly answer that. Really reassuring, though, that gets so many votes. It shows the Environment Agency is still seen as an essential organisation in this dynamic. So this is really interesting. I think this year we've actually moved us into the position where we are now actually recognising formally citizen science information as a key part of our evidence base, and that can be proven by all the material that we've now got on our website. So we've got the framework, we've got examples, we've got case studies. So it's there, it's in our shop window officially. This is the way we're working. There is still a little bit of pioneering to do in the Environment Agency, I think it's fair to say. It's a large organisation, and we're still winning over the hearts and minds of every single individual and every single potential use case. So if you do get any difficulties, we've got Kelly's team herself, and as she said earlier, we've got a group of dispersed citizen scientists in the area teams, and they're the people to go through if you find that you're kind of getting into any sort of hearts and minds issues in the Environment Agency. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Was that good?
That was great, thank you.
Thank you for the continued audience participation, which we started off this morning. It's what it's all about. Okay, great. Does anybody else have a comment on that, or should we just listen to it? Fine.
I did want to add something. I think it's a really key point about the role of government in ensuring that, as well as all of this brilliant voluntary work we're doing, that there's a really strong regulatory backstop at work here. You know, some of the tensions that you mentioned, Ellie, about not being able to share data openly because it'll undermine the partnership working you're doing. If we don't have a strong regulatory backstop that says, if we've got evidence that you're polluting or that you're doing something wrong, we will enforce, that strengthens all of this win-win voluntary work that we do. And I think we need to build into the future some earned recognition of farmers, landowners, businesses that are going the extra mile to be transparent and to work with us to get the data and evidence. And I think that's essential, and you know, only government can do that. We need to have that backstop. I remember Dylan Bright, the late great Dylan Bright, years ago talking about that being an absolutely essential underpinning for the catchment-based approach. You can't sell the win-wins if you don't have that hard line that you're moving away from.
Thank you. So next question that's up then is, how does citizen science data get onto the open data platform? And there's a lot of QA work involved, so how is that resourced? Putting data up there, is that, Ellie, can you answer that? Or?
I've worked with Will and Alfie.
Yeah, okay, go on.
We're getting an easy ride.
It's very participatory.
Yeah. I didn't think we'd back up here, but nice. Cool. So yeah, we do kind of work on an individual level with contributors at the moment. So Will does a lot of that work and has done a lot of the hard work behind the data hub. So it's quite a manual process at the moment. And where possible, we want to understand their own QA processes and embed that in the metadata. And we go through and run through like a checklist of minimum requirements expected from the data and the metadata. But then look into the future, and Melissa, I'll be interested to hear how Stream do this. But we'd like to sort of automate some of that QA to make it easier. So things like just rejecting points based on a spatial sort of template. So, you know, if they're in the sea somewhere, they don't come into the data platform. Or if they fall out the ranges of those equipments and methods. And we'd like to sort of work with the common data platform. So again, mentioned again, Cartographer and Water Rangers and Esri and EpiCollect, to understand that how QA can be implemented and how much we can embed sort of point-based capture rules and survey design, so that when you're actually collecting that data, it's doing that QA on the fly rather than somebody having to do that afterwards. So I don't know, Melissa, if you've got anything to add from Stream.
I mean, ideally, you build it in at the data capture. You understand your data quality rules and you embed them into the point of capture, so that you get better quality data coming in. But we accept we are where we are, so you do need to have some process that enables you to QA that. And the way we do it in Stream is that, okay, we started out sort of like eyeballing the data, go, does it look about right? Yeah, okay, publish it, go through. But then we put in some quality assurance scripts. So does it conform to the schema that we've agreed to? And quite shocked at how it didn't conform. So we've now been able to create a feedback loop to the publishing water companies to say, your data conforms 50%. You need to go away and do something about the other 50%. So it's this feedback loop of like, where are the issues coming in terms of like the data quality that's being prepared for publication. If you don't have that quality assurance step, it does start to undermine trust, because as soon as somebody, I mean, the worst thing in the world really is the user coming and saying, you've got flaws in your data, I'm no longer going to use it because I don't trust it anymore. So if you can sort of show how you're building in quality from the outset, and then having some verification and validation steps within your process and automated as far as possible, I think in the early days we're probably going to have to understand the variability in the data, and then build in some scripts that can, when you're on upload, you can run those and either remove data points and go back to the user and give them some insight into how much of their data is actually being able to be published.
Great. Yeah, I think a lot of the stuff if anyone's heard of the Water Quality Exchange in North America, a lot of the work they do does the exact same thing as what Melissa just explained. So we've got like something to work towards from that point of view.
Yes, all eminently doable.
Yeah.
Alfie, we're going to ask the next question now, so do you want to stay up and bring that? So the next question is, how do we ensure that the findings of high-quality data lead to ambitious action against a context of under-resourcing and bureaucracy? And I guess it links a little bit with the, is more data always better, considering the resources? So who would like to come in on that?
I can perhaps come in from an Anglian perspective. So obviously part of CaSTCo involved creating those collaborative monitoring plans, which really kind of got all kind of working together as a catchment partnership to understand, you know, where do people currently monitor, where are the gaps, and where should future work be targeted. And I see like this kind of, you know, this movement as a way to understand everyone, you know, everyone's catchments better, to then target catchment planning and then ultimately investment from that. So for me, it's like it's a piece of that puzzle to know, okay, well, what problem are we dealing with, and then how should we intervene, and then how can we finance that intervention. So that's my answer to that one.
Michelle. Of course, I've got something to say. I think one of the key things that we need to do from here on is to make sure that we're really knitting the work we're doing on CaSTCo with what's going on in CABA and the catchment-based approach. And, you know, you've seen in the Cunliffe report that it's calling for much greater funding and recognition of those partnerships. And I think if we can, you know, both resource those to a greater degree, so we've got the leeway to really knit together the need through the CABA catchment planning process and the data that we can feed in through the CaSTCo approach. That's the key for me. It's got to be driven by what are your objectives, what are your partnership goals, but also let's not forget, you know, there are people out there really crying out for better data. We're seeing more and more green finance initiatives popping up and crying out for nationally standardized evidence that can underpin investment decisions for the long term. People want this, they can fund it, we just got to knit it together and like Ollie was saying, what's our value proposition? How can we present this to people in a way that makes sense to them to invest in?
Brilliant, thank you. We've
answer the question about more data. Is more data a problem? Just without getting too techy, there are efficient ways to handling and processing data, but I do believe data has to have a purpose. Just capturing more data for the sake of capturing data, which is where I think it loops back around to the catchment planning processes, is like what actually needs to be captured and who needs to be able to be in receipt of that. And then going back to that point about the QA process, if we can build QA in at the start, the data capture, it avoids that processing, that automated processing of, because that's the thing that burns carbon, right? Processing. Storage is less of a problem, and there's many ways you can use cold storage and things like that, but that keeps the footprint down. It's the processing that is the cost. So how we can design in minimising the processing of that data for publication, then that helps us manage the impact associated with that. Also, making sure that your platform's running on green energy is a good way to go as well.
Thanks, Melissa. In fact, that's kind of picked up a couple of the other questions that are coming down there, and I think, I mean, the whole AI and computer power question is a big topic to cover.
Yeah, use it wisely is my advice. Right?
I'll take your comment, Kelly, then I'm just really conscious of time for the rest of the day.
Just one thing to add, and I think it just comes back to the point about being open and transparent with your data, because it's about building on existing and learning from existing, and if that data even needs to be collected because it may already exist. And I think that's another kind of point, is encouraging that open data or sharing of your data means that we all have the ability to see what data is out there and avoid some of that data for the sake of data.
I think that's great. Well, we'll land on that comment, so thank you very much. So I'd just like to thank our lightning speakers who sat that back down again, our pop-up audience who got involved, so thank you very much, and of course our panellists.